At New York's JFK Airport, a single piece of paper stood between 22-year-old Amara Washington and her future. That paper was a first-class boarding pass to London, her ticket to the interview of a lifetime. But to gate agent Catherine Jenkins, a woman soured by prejudice, the ticket looked like a lie. In a stunning display of misplaced authority, Catherine tore Amara's future in two. She had no way of knowing that she wasn't just shredding paper. She was severing a direct line to the billionaire investor who held the fate of her entire airline in his hands. This is the story of a colossal misjudgment and the swift, brutal karma that followed. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 hummed with a unique frequency of hurried anxiety and privileged leisure. It was a symphony of rolling carry-ons, multilingual announcements, and the soft, insistent chime of final boarding calls. For Amara Washington, it was the sound of her future beginning. At 22, she was walking on air, a feeling that had little to do with the polished marble floors beneath her trendy yet comfortable sneakers. She had just graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design RISD at the top of her class in industrial design. Her final year project, a series of modular, sustainable public seating solutions, had not only won her the department's highest honors, but had also caught the eye of the prestigious Devereux Design Institute in London. They had offered her one of 3 coveted fellowship interview slots. This trip wasn't just a trip, it was a transatlantic bridge to the rest of her life. Her ticket was first class on Aurafly Flight 104 to London Heathrow. The ticket was a graduation gift from her Uncle Andrew. Amara had protested at first. Premium economy would have been more than fine. But Uncle Andrew had been insistent. "You are going to an interview to showcase your first-class talent, Amara," he'd said over the phone, his voice a warm, deep baritone that always made you feel secure. "You will arrive rested, prepared, and in the mindset of someone who belongs exactly where she is. No arguments." There was rarely any winning an argument with Andrew Thorne. Amara found gate C26 and surveyed the scene. Aurafly was a relatively new player in the transatlantic market, having emerged from the shell of a legacy carrier that had gone bankrupt. It was rebranded with sleek minimalist aesthetics, charcoal grey, and a calming sky blue. The marketing promised a new atmosphere of travel. It was all very chic, very modern, and very expensive. The first-class boarding area was a roped-off section with plush seating. Amara, clutching her carry-on that held her portfolio and her interview outfit, felt a familiar faint flicker of imposter syndrome. The other passengers in the section were mostly white men in their 40s and 50s, dressed in tailored business suits, their fingers tapping away at laptops, their faces set with the easy confidence of people who flew this way all the time. Amara, in her stylish black jumpsuit and with her magnificent braids coiled into an elegant bun, knew she looked good. But she couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. She settled into a seat, pulled out a book, and tried to project an aura of belonging. That's when she first noticed the gate agent. The woman's name tag read Catherine. She was in her late 40s or early 50s, with a helmet of stiff blonde hair and a face that seemed permanently soured, as if she'd just bitten into a lemon. She moved with a kind of weary aggression, snatching passports with a sharp tug, and barking instructions at passengers who fumbled with their bags. She was the antithesis of Aurafly's serene branding. Amara watched Catherine interact with a flustered elderly couple, snapping at them for not having their documents ready. Then she watched her wave through a young white man in a hoodie and ripped jeans with a nod, barely glancing at his ticket. Amara felt a small, familiar knot tighten in her stomach. It was a knot she'd learned to recognize over the years, the precursor to being singled out. She pushed the feeling down. Don't be paranoid, she told herself. It's a stressful job. It's not about you. Finally, the announcement came delivered by Catherine's sharp, nasal voice. We are now pleased to invite our first-class passengers to begin boarding for Aurafly Flight 104 to London Heathrow. Please have your boarding pass and passport open and ready. The businessmen began to gather their things with unhurried efficiency. Amara took a deep breath, stood up, and joined the short line, her heart thrumming with a mixture of excitement and that lingering, unwelcome apprehension. She was next. She stepped forward, offering a small, polite smile. Good afternoon, Amara said, holding out her passport and boarding pass. Catherine's eyes flickered over Amara, a swift, dismissive inventory, from her sneakers to her braids. She took the documents without a word. Her eyes narrowed at the boarding pass. She scanned it. Then she scanned it again. The silence stretched, becoming heavy and conspicuous. There seems to be a problem, Catherine said loudly, her voice carrying over the quiet murmur of the gate area. Amara's smile faltered. A problem is something wrong with the scanner. The problem, Catherine continued, her voice dripping with insinuation, is with this ticket. She held it up between two fingers as if it were contaminated. The other passengers in line were beginning to stare. I don't understand, Amara said, her voice steady, though her palms were beginning to sweat. My ticket was confirmed. You can see my name, Amara Washington. It matches my passport. Catherine let out a short, derisive laugh. Oh, I see the name. I just find it highly unlikely. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial, yet still audible whisper. These seats are very expensive. Honey, did you purchase this ticket yourself? The knot in Amara's stomach was now a cold, hard stone. The casual honey, the accusatory tone, it was all there. She felt a flush of heat creep up her neck. My uncle bought it for me as a graduation present, she said, keeping her voice even and professional. Is there an issue with the payment? I'm sure he can be contacted if need be. Your uncle? Catherine repeated the word as if it were absurd. She tapped a few keys on her computer, her lips pursed. We've been having a lot of issues with credit card fraud lately, especially for these premium seats. People using stolen numbers to get a taste of a life they can't afford. The accusation was no longer veiled. It was a direct, ugly shot. Amara could feel the eyes of every person in the vicinity on her. Humiliation, hot and sharp, pricked at the back of her eyes. My ticket is not fraudulent. Amara stated, her voice now firm, shedding its polite softness. My name is Amara Washington. My seat is 2A. My confirmation number is right there. You can look it up. You will see that it is fully paid for and confirmed. A young man in line behind her, wearing glasses and a tech company t-shirt, shifted uncomfortably. Just scan the ticket, lady, he muttered, just loud enough for Catherine to hear. Catherine shot him a venomous glare before turning her attention back to Amara. It was as if the challenge had solidified her resolve. She was on a power trip, and she wasn't backing down. I need to see the credit card that was used to purchase this ticket, she demanded. I don't have it, Amara said, incredulous. It was a gift. My uncle lives in California. Why would I have his credit card? Very convenient, Catherine sneered. She looked from the boarding pass to Amara's face, a smug little smile playing on her lips. I'm not going to let you board this plane. Amara's breath hitched. You can't do that. My ticket is valid. This is my flight. I have a very important interview in London." "Everyone has an important something or other," Catherine said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. "But not everyone belongs in first class." And then she did it. With a look of final triumphant authority, Catherine Jenkins took Amara Washington's first-class boarding pass and with a deliberate theatrical slowness ripped it in half. Then for good measure, she tore the two halves into quarters. The crisp, tearing sound cut through the air, a sound of finality, of utter contempt. She dropped the confetti of Amara's future onto the counter. "Now you have no boarding pass," Catherine said, her voice cold and flat. "Next in line." For a moment, Amara couldn't breathe. The world seemed to tilt the sounds of the airport, fading into a dull roar. The torn pieces of paper on the counter felt like a physical assault. The businessmen behind her looked away, embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. The young man with the glasses, however, had quietly lifted his phone and was now recording. Tears of pure, undiluted rage and humiliation welled in Amara's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this woman. "You have no right," Amara whispered, her voice shaking. "I have every right," Catherine retorted, already reaching for the next passenger's passport. "I'm the gate agent. My job is to protect the airline's assets. Now please step aside. You're holding up the line." Defeated, and with the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on her, Amara Washington stepped away from the gate, the shredded remains of her hopes sighting on the counter behind her. The plane to her future was boarding, and she had just been left behind. Amara stumbled away from the gate, her body on autopilot. She found a deserted seating area near a darkened food court, the kind of airport purgatory that exists between concourses. She finally sank into a cold plastic chair, and the tears she had held back so fiercely now came in a silent, hot torrent. It wasn't just the missed flight. It was the public stripping of her dignity. It was the casual, venomous assumption that a young black woman couldn't possibly belong in a space of luxury and success. Catherine's words echoed in her head, a taste of a life they can't afford. She had worked so hard, harder than anyone, to prove she belonged. And in one vicious moment, it had all been undone by a woman with a name tag and a petty grievance against the world. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was her mum. She swiped to answer, her voice thick with tears. "Hi, sweetie. Are you on the plane? I wanted to catch you before you took off." Her mother's cheerful voice came through the line. A sob escaped Amara's lips. "No, Mum. They wouldn't let me board." The cheerfulness in her mother's voice vanished, replaced by alarm. What do you mean? What happened?" Through hiccuping breaths, Amara recounted the entire mortifying ordeal, the questions, the accusations, Catherine's sneering face, and the final brutal sound of the tearing paper. Her mother was silent for a moment, and Amara could practically hear the gears of maternal fury turning. "Amara, I am so sorry this happened to you. This is unacceptable. Okay, I want you to take a deep breath. You are not going to talk to some airline customer service hotline. You are going to call your Uncle Andrew, right now." "Uncle Andrew. Mum, he's busy. I can't bother him with this. It's just a... No." Her mother cut her off, her voice firm as steel. "It is not just a anything. It is a humiliation, and it was directed at his family. Andrew needs to know. He will know exactly what to do. Call him. Now. I'll stay on the line until he picks up." Hesitantly, Amara did as she was told. She pulled up the contact for Uncle Andrew. Her finger hovered over the call button. He was Andrew Thorne, the founder and managing partner of Phoenix Capital Partners, a private equity firm known for its aggressive yet brilliant restructuring of distressed companies. He was a titan, a name whispered with respect on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley. He managed billions of dollars, and he was about to get a call about a torn boarding pass. It felt absurd. She pressed the button. It rang twice. Amara. His voice answered not a question but a warm statement. He always sounded happy to hear from her. Shouldn't you be 30,000 feet in the air by now? That was all it took for her composure to crumble again. They didn't let me on the plane, Uncle Andrew, she cried. The warmth in his voice was instantly replaced by a cold, sharp focus. What explain? Slowly. Amara once again recounted the story, her voice steadier this time, fueled by a simmering anger that was beginning to replace the hurt. She gave him every detail, gate C-26 Aurafly Flight 104, and the name on the tag. Catherine, she said, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. On the other end of the line, in his minimalist office overlooking the San Francisco Bay, Andrew Thorne was perfectly still. His knuckles were white where he gripped his pen. He listened without interruption until she was finished. The silence that followed was more menacing than any shouting could ever be. She tore up your boarding pass, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Yes. And she accused you of fraud. Yes. And her name is Catherine. Yes, Catherine Jenkins, I think. I saw the last name on her tag for a second. Stay where you are, Amara. Do not move. Do not talk to anyone else from the airline. Just sit tight. I'm going to make one phone call. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. He hung up. Andrew Thorne swiveled in his Herman Miller chair to face the window. For a moment, he wasn't a billionaire investor. He was the protective older brother to Amara's mother, the man who had held Amara as a baby and promised he would always look out for her. The prejudice she had faced was a story he knew all too well, a battle he had fought in boardrooms and country clubs his entire life. He had built his empire as a fortress to protect his family from exactly this kind of poison, and a gate agent had just stormed the castle walls. He picked up his personal phone and scrolled to a name he hadn't planned on calling today. Robert Stratton, CEO of Aurafly. Phoenix Capital Partners was the lead investor in the consortium that had bailed Aurafly out of bankruptcy 6 months prior. They had injected $750 million into the airline, saving it from liquidation. Andrew Thorne didn't just have a stake in the airline. He owned its survival. His money paid Robert Stratton's salary, the fuel for the jets, and by extension the paycheck of a gate agent named Catherine. Stratton answered on the first ring, his voice professionally smooth. Andrew. To what do I owe the pleasure? Rob. Andrew began, his voice devoid of any warmth. I have a situation, and it is now your situation. Stratton's posture straightened in his office in Dallas. The tone in Thorne's voice was one he'd heard before, usually right before a company's leadership was fired. What's going on? About an hour ago, at JFK Terminal 4, Gate C-26. One of your gate agents, a woman named Catherine, denied boarding to a first-class passenger on Flight 104 to London. Okay, Stratton said cautiously. I'm sure there was a reason. A documentation issue, perhaps. Oh, there was a reason, Andrew said, his voice like ice. Your employee decided based on her own personal bigotry that my niece didn't look like she belonged in first class. She accused her of credit card fraud and then, for effect, she tore up her valid, fully paid-for boarding pass in front of a line of other passengers. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Robert Stratton could feel the blood draining from his face. My niece. Those two words had just turned a customer service complaint into a 5-alarm corporate fire. Andrew, I am speechless. I don't know what to say. Good, Andrew snapped. Then listen. You have built this new brand around an atmosphere of travel. You took $750 million of my firm's capital based on a vision of premium service and inclusivity, and the face of your airline, the very first point of contact for a first-class passenger, just spat on that vision. She didn't just humiliate a 22-year-old girl, Rob. She took a match to our investment. She put our entire brand promise at risk. I'll handle it immediately, Andrew. I'll get to the bottom of it. We'll issue a refund, of course, and a travel voucher. A voucher! Andrew's voice was suddenly a roar, and Stratton flinched as if he'd been struck. A travel voucher. Do you think this is about a missed flight? This is about a fundamental breach of the trust my firm placed in you and your management. Your employees' conduct may have just triggered a review of our entire capital commitment. A review that asks whether the leadership at Aurafly is competent enough to prevent this kind of brand-destroying liability. This was the kill shot. A review of the capital commitment was code for pulling the plug. Aurafly would be insolvent within a month without Phoenix Capital. What do you want me to do? Stratton asked, his voice now a strained whisper. First, Andrew said, his voice back to a chilling calm. You're going to get the general manager of JFK, your highest-ranking executive at that airport, and you are going to have him find my niece. Her name is Amara Washington. She's in a deserted seating area near gate C26. He is going to apologize to her on behalf of the entire company. Second, you will arrange for a private jet to take her to London tonight. Not an Aurafly jet. I don't want her setting foot on another one of your planes until I'm satisfied. Use NetJets. Send the bill to me. I'll deduct it from your next management fee. Third, I want the name of every single employee involved in this, from the agent to her supervisor, who I assume stood by and did nothing. I want them suspended pending termination. And Rob. He paused for effect. I want a preliminary report on my desk in 1 hour. Not an email. A report. Tell me how you're going to fix the systemic rot in your company that allows a woman like Catherine to feel so empowered. Is that clear? Crystal Andrew, Stratton squeaked out. It's done. Good. Andrew hung up. The first tremors of the earthquake had begun. At gate C26, the world was about to turn upside down. For Catherine Jenkins, the moment the jet bridge retracted from the fuselage of Flight 104, a wave of profound satisfaction washed over her. It was the feeling of order restored, of a wrong made right. She watched the hulking aircraft push back from the gate, its engines beginning to whine, and allowed herself a small, tight smile. She had done her duty. She had protected the sanctity of the first-class cabin, a small but significant bastion of aspiration and success. In her mind, the young woman Amara was an interloper, a player in a game whose rules she didn't understand. Now the board was set correctly once more. She tidied her counter with brisk, efficient movements, throwing away stray bits of paper and wiping down the scanner. Her internal monologue was a running commentary of self-justification. Some people need to learn, she thought, the sentiment, a familiar and comforting refrain. You can't just waltz in with a fancy ticket somebody else bought and expect a red carpet. Life doesn't work that way. The memory of tearing the boarding pass gave her a faint, pleasant jolt of adrenaline. It was a decisive action. Final. Her reverie was broken by the harried approach of her supervisor, David Chen. David was a man who seemed to exist in a perpetual state of low-grade panic, always trying to placate someone, irate passengers demanding pilots, or aloof corporate managers. Today his panic dial was turned up to 11. His face was slick with sweat, and his tie was slightly askew. "Catherine, I need to talk to you." "Now," he said, his voice a low, urgent hiss. He gestured toward the short hallway leading to the staff break room. Catherine rolled her eyes with theatrical weariness. "David, I'm just closing out the flight. What is it?" "It's about the passenger you denied boarding. The young woman." "I handled it," Catherine said dismissively, her tone implying he was a child who couldn't grasp adult matters. It was a clear case of suspected fraud. Her story was full of holes. She had no proof of purchase. I made an executive decision based on my 22 years of experience. David ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Your executive decision is blowing up in my face, Catherine. I've had 405 now emails from first-class passengers complaining about your conduct. They called it unprofessional, abusive, and one even called it a disgusting display of racism." Catherine bristled her back, straightening. "Oh, please. People are so sensitive these days. They don't know what they saw. I was preventing a potential loss for the company." "A loss, Catherine? Do you have any idea what's happening right now?" David pulled out his phone, his thumb shaking as he swiped through an app. "There's a video. Someone filmed the whole thing. The way you talked to her. The way you tore the ticket. It's already on Twitter. Liam somebody, the guy in 3B, posted it. It's getting passed around. Fast." For the first time, a sliver of unease pierced Catherine's armor of self-righteousness. A video. That was messy. Still, she held her ground. "So what?" "It will show me doing my job. Corporate will see that I was protecting their interests." Before David could respond with the further panic that was clearly building in his chest, a seismic shift occurred in the atmosphere of the gate area. The normal chaotic flow of passengers slowed. The chatter of the other airline staff quieted. 3 men in immaculate dark grey suits were moving toward them. They weren't walking. They were slicing through the terminal crowd with the grim purpose of surgeons heading to a critical operation. The man in the lead was Stephen Caldwell, the general manager for Aura Fly's entire JFK operation. He was a silver-haired, imposing figure with a reputation for being ruthless, sharp, and utterly devoted to the corporate line. Catherine had only ever seen him in person once from a distance during a terminal-wide address. Flanking him were the airport's head of security and a man she recognized as Caldwell's deputy. They were not smiling. Caldwell's eyes, famous for their piercing blue, were like chips of ice, and they were locked directly on her. David Chen seemed to shrink, his face turning the color of putty. "Oh, God," he whispered. Caldwell didn't break stride until he was standing directly in front of them. His presence was so overpowering, it felt like the air pressure had dropped. "Catherine Jenkins?" he asked, though it wasn't a question. His voice was quiet, but it carried the unmistakable weight of absolute authority. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell." Catherine stammered, her own confidence suddenly evaporating like mist. "My office. Now," he commanded. He then turned his cold gaze to David. "Mr. Chen, you will remain here. I want a complete log of every passenger complaint received regarding Flight 104. I want the personnel files for every staff member on duty at this gate. and you will secure every second of CCTV footage from this entire concourse for the past 2 hours. Have it all sent to my office within the next 15 minutes. Am I understood?" "Yes, sir. Absolutely," David squeaked, looking utterly terrified. Catherine felt a cold dread begin to seep into her bones. This was not the reaction of a company that was about to give her a commendation. She followed Caldwell and his entourage, in a daze, her legs feeling strangely disconnected from her body. They entered a small, glass-walled administrative office, and the door clicked shut behind them, with a sound of chilling finality. Caldwell didn't sit. He stood in the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, looking down at Catherine as if she were a particularly unpleasant specimen under a microscope. "Ms. Jenkins," he began, his voice dangerously calm, "I want you to walk me through the incident with passenger Amara Washington. I want every detail. Do not omit anything." Attempting to gather the shredded remnants of her composure, Catherine recounted her version of the events. She tried to frame it as a procedural matter, peppering her story with phrases like standard security protocols, passenger failed to verify, and protecting company assets. She painted Amara as evasive and suspicious, and herself as a vigilant, long-serving employee. She finished her heart pounding, hoping her performance had been convincing. Caldwell listened without a single flicker of expression. When she was done, he remained silent for a long, torturous moment. "An impressive narrative, Ms. Jenkins," he finally said, the compliment landing like a punch. "Now let's talk about reality. I've reviewed your own after-action report, which you filed just 20 minutes ago. You noted suspicion of fraud. Did our system at any point flag the payment method used for this ticket? Well, no, but did the passenger's government-issued identification fail to match the name on the ticket? No, it matched but the circumstances. So," Caldwell interrupted, taking a step closer, "there was no system flag, no document mismatch. The sole basis for this entire confrontation, the reason you chose to publicly humiliate a paying customer in our most valuable cabin, was your own personal unsubstantiated feeling. Is that correct? My experience told me something was wrong." Catherine insisted, her voice rising with a note of desperation. "Your experience," Caldwell repeated the words with utter contempt. "Let me tell you about my experience, Ms. Jenkins. My experience involves a frantic phone call 30 minutes ago from our CEO, Robert Stratton. He was not in a good mood. Do you know why?" Catherine shook her head, her mouth suddenly dry as dust. "Because Mr. Stratton had just gotten off the phone with a man named Andrew Thorne. Does that name mean anything to you?" Catherine stared blankly. "No, sir." "Should it?" A horrifying sound escaped Caldwell's lips, a dry, mirthless laugh that held no humor, only despair. "Should it, Ms. Jenkins? Andrew Thorne is the founder and managing partner of Phoenix Capital Partners. Phoenix Capital is the private equity group that brought this airline back from the dead 6 months ago. They are our majority owners. Andrew Thorne, for all intents and purposes, is Aurafly. His money pays for the paint on the planes, the fuel in the tanks, and the salary in your bank account." He paused, letting the weight of that information sink in. Catherine felt a wave of nausea. The world began to tilt on its axis. Caldwell leaned in his voice, dropping to a near whisper. "And Amara Washington, the young woman whose ticket you so dramatically tore to pieces, is his beloved niece. The CEO has been informed that Mr. Thorne views this not as a customer service issue, but as a direct insult to his family and a catastrophic failure of the brand he invested some $750 million in. He is displeased." The word displeased was so inadequate for the sheer terror it conveyed that it was almost comical. Catherine's mind went blank. The smug satisfaction, the self-righteousness, it all dissolved into a roaring void of pure animal panic. The girl, the uncle, the owner. The pieces clicked into place with the sickening finality of a guillotine. I didn't know, she whispered the words pathetic even to her own ears. Precisely. Caldwell roared, his composure finally snapping. You didn't know, you didn't see a person, a customer, or even a niece of the man who owns this company. You saw a stereotype that fit your own ugly prejudices, and you acted on it. You have single-handedly created a 5-alarm corporate firestorm that is threatening to burn this entire airline to the ground. He took a deep, steadying breath. Hand me your company ID and airport credentials. You are suspended indefinitely pending termination. An armed Port Authority officer is waiting outside this door to escort you from the airport premises. You are not to speak to anyone on your way out. You are not to access any more company systems. Is that understood? Catherine could only nod, her hands trembling uncontrollably as she fumbled in her purse for her IDs. Her world had not just crumbled. It had been vaporized. Meanwhile, in a quiet, forgotten corner of the terminal, Amara had moved past tears into a state of cold, resolute anger. She had her phone out, not to call her family again, but to research Aurafly's corporate complaint structure. She was composing a long, detailed email in her head, determined to fight this through official channels. The offer for the fellowship in London felt 1,000,000 miles away. That's when she saw him. Stephen Caldwell. His face a mask of practiced, desperate contrition, was hurrying toward her. Ms. Washington. Amara Washington. He called out, his voice a strange mix of deference and panic. Amara looked up, wary. Yes. Ms. Washington. My name is Stephen Caldwell. I am the general manager for Aurafly at JFK. He stopped a respectful distance away, his posture almost a bow. On behalf of every single employee of this airline, from our CEO down to myself, I want to offer you my most sincere, profound and unreserved apology for the absolutely horrific experience you endured at the hands of our employee. Amara stared at him, momentarily speechless. The speed and seniority of this response was baffling. Your treatment, he continued, speaking rapidly, was a complete failure. It was inexcusable, unprofessional, and a violation of everything we claim to stand for. I want to assure you the agent responsible has been removed from her post and suspended from all duties. He paused as if bracing himself. Your uncle, Mr. Thorne, has been in contact with our leadership. At his explicit request, we have a private car waiting to take you to the executive aviation terminal at Teterboro. A NetJets Global 6000 has been chartered to fly you to London. It can depart whenever you are ready. The words private car and NetJets hung in the air so ludicrously out of place with her reality of moments ago that Amara almost laughed. The full picture was coming into focus. Her uncle had not just made a call, he had dropped a bomb. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her immense relief, sharp vindication, and a slight unease at the sheer, overwhelming force of the power now moving on her behalf. She found her voice and was surprised by its steadiness. Thank you for the apology, Mr. Caldwell. She stood collecting her carry-on. She was no longer just a wronged passenger. She was a piece on a much larger board now. I accept. As Caldwell gratefully began to lead her toward the exit. His phone, his deputy's phone, and the security chief's phone all began to buzz and chime at the exact same moment. The three men stopped in their tracks, pulling out their devices. Caldwell's face, already pale, turned a ghostly white. He stared at his screen, his mouth slightly agape. "What is it?" Amara asked. He looked up from his phone, his eyes wide with fresh horror. He read the news alert headline aloud, his voice cracking. Reuters viral video shows Aurafly agent tearing up black woman's first-class ticket in apparent profiling incident. "Oh my God," he whispered to his deputy. "It's out. It's everywhere." The firestorm had just escaped containment. It was no longer a corporate crisis. It was now a global spectacle. And Amara Washington was standing at its quiet, dignified center. The dawn that broke over Dallas, Texas, brought no relief. For the occupants of the gleaming 50-story tower that served as Aurafly's global headquarters, it was the dawn of a day of judgment. The atmosphere inside was not one of quiet professionalism, but of barely suppressed panic. The PR department, normally a hub of cheerful spin, was a war room. Phones rang with the incessant, angry demands of journalists from every major news outlet on the planet. The legal department was a frantic hive of hushed conversations with lawyers poring over liability statutes, their faces grim. On the main floor, a massive wall-mounted screen that usually displayed inspiring travel vistas and positive market trends now showed a single devastating image on a loop on every cable news network. A grainy still of Katherine Jenkins's face contorted in a sneer next to the clear, dignified profile of Amara Washington. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack was now accompanied by #Aurafly and #FireKatherine. The video Liam had filmed had been viewed over 50 million times. Worse, financial news outlets had cross-referenced the flight time with market data, and the headline was brutal Aurafly loses $300 million in market cap after viral profiling incident. The crisis wasn't just reputational, it was a catastrophic financial hemorrhage. In his penthouse office on the top floor, CEO Robert Stratton was a ghost. He hadn't slept. His desk was littered with empty coffee cups and printouts of angry emails from institutional investors. He had spent the night in a futile damage control effort, issuing a preliminary statement about investigating an incident, which the public had immediately torn to shreds as weak and evasive. He had just finished a call with a pension fund manager who controlled a massive block of Aurafly stock. The man's final words echoed in his ears. "Fix this, Rob, or my board will fix it for you." His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Stratton." His assistant's strained voice said all board members are present or patched in. The meeting is ready to begin. Stratton straightened his tie, a pointless gesture of normalcy in a world turned upside down, and walked toward the boardroom. The space paneled in dark, imposing mahogany, meant to convey a century of stability, today felt like a funeral parlor. The faces of the board members seated around the table were pale and grim. The few who were patched in remotely on large screens looked equally funereal. "As you all know," Stratton began, his voice raspy, "we are facing an unprecedented operational and public relations crisis. My team has drafted a multi-point plan to—" "A plan, Rob," scoffed Harrison Finch, the board's resident legal hawk, and a man who valued risk aversion above all else. "Your plan last night was to issue a statement that was tantamount to pouring gasoline on a forest fire. We are past plans. We are in survival mode." Another board member, a marketing guru named Chloe Webb, chimed in. "Harrison's right. The brand is toxic right now. Our name is being associated with bigotry. We need a grand gesture. A massive ad campaign, maybe. A commitment to a major urban charity. The room descended into a cacophony of panicked, conflicting suggestions, a testament to a leadership team in full meltdown. It was into this chaos that the main video screen at the head of the table flickered to life. The image that appeared was not of a remote office. It was the crisply focused high-definition feed from a suite at the Carlyle Hotel in New York City. Andrew Thorne stared out at them, his expression utterly devoid of emotion. He was wearing a simple dark sweater, but he radiated more power than every suited executive in the Dallas boardroom combined. He had flown overnight. He was on the battlefield. "Good morning," Andrew said, and the sound of his voice, amplified through the room's speakers, instantly silenced the babble. It was not a greeting. It was the tolling of a bell. "You can all stop brainstorming," he continued, his eyes sweeping across their panicked faces as if he were reading their souls. "Your time to be proactive expired yesterday at approximately 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time when your employee decided to play God at Gate C. I received your CEO's preliminary report last night, Rob. It was an insulting piece of corporate doublespeak, a masterclass in saying nothing. So I have created a new plan for you. You will not debate it. You will not amend it. You will ratify it. Consider this a binding directive from your majority shareholder." Stratton opened his mouth to speak, but Andrew cut him off with a slight raise of his hand. "First, terminations. Firing Catherine Jenkins was a given, an act as meaningless as swatting a fly. Her supervisor, David Chen, will also be terminated by noon today. I've reviewed the security footage he so helpfully secured. He watched. He hovered. He did nothing. In the face of grotesque injustice, silence is endorsement. Inaction is complicity. He is a symptom of the rot, the fear-based culture where employees are too cowardly to do the right thing. Furthermore, your internal audit team will be sequestered. They will conduct a full review of every single discrimination and conduct complaint filed at the JFK station for the past 5 years, and the results will be delivered to my office, not yours, by the end of this week." He held up a second finger, his gaze unwavering. "Second, the apology. Your pathetic press release is to be retracted. Today at a press conference, you, Rob, will stand before the world. You will not say, 'We regret the incident.' You will say, 'Aura Fly apologizes to Ms. Amara Washington.' You will say her name. And then you will say, 'Our employee engaged in an act of racial profiling.' You will use those specific, uncomfortable and truthful words. Harrison," he said, his eyes locking onto the legal hawk, "I can see you calculating the potential tort claims. Allow me to save you the effort. The lawsuit you're afraid of is a paper cut. The damage to our brand from being perceived as liars and cowards is a fatal gunshot wound. We will lead with the truth, or we will have no company left to defend." Finch, who had indeed been about to object, shrank back in his chair, as if he'd been physically struck. "Third," Andrew went on, his voice a relentless, pounding rhythm, "restitution. But not in the way you think. Offering my niece money would be the ultimate insult, an attempt to buy her silence. Her dignity is not for sale. Instead, Aura Fly will do something meaningful. You will establish a new independent charitable foundation. It will be named the Amara Washington Initiative for the Arts. You will provide its initial endowment with a one-time, non-negotiable seed payment of $25 million. Audible gasps filled the room. A board member started to speak, but Andrew talked over him. "This foundation will not be a PR slush fund. It will be managed by an independent board of unimpeachable leaders in the arts and civil rights communities. It will exist for a single purpose, to provide scholarships and grants to gifted, underprivileged students of color in the fields of design, architecture, and fine arts. You will turn an act of exclusion into a perpetual engine of inclusion. You will take the name your employee tried to tarnish, and you will make it a national symbol of opportunity. It is the only story that will save you." He paused, letting the audacity of the demand settle in. "And finally," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, menacing level, "you are going to fix the disease inside this company. You will immediately retain the services of the Sterling Reed Group for a complete, top-to-bottom corporate culture audit. For those of you who don't know, they are the most effective and most ruthless DEI consultancy in the world. They will examine everything from hiring and promotion to unconscious bias in your training manuals. Their recommendations will be binding, and their considerable fees will not come from the company's operating budget. They will be paid directly out of the annual bonus pool for this board and for all C-suite executives. This is your remedial education. You will pay for your own tuition." The final sentence landed with brutal precision. He wasn't just demanding change, he was making them pay for it personally. "This is the price of keeping Phoenix Capital's money and my confidence in this airline." Andrew concluded, his face an unreadable mask of granite. "I expect a unanimous vote to accept every one of these terms. You have until noon today. If the vote is not unanimous, or if I hear of any attempt to undermine these directives, I will hold my own press conference this afternoon. The topic will be our firm's complete and total divestment from Aurafly, citing a catastrophic loss of faith in its leadership. Choose wisely." The screen went black. For a full minute, the only sound in the Dallas boardroom was the faint hum of the air conditioning. The powerful men and women who hours ago were masters of their universe were now utterly broken. They had been cornered, eviscerated, and served a set of terms that amounted to a total surrender of their authority. Robert Stratton stared at the blank screen where Andrew Thorne's face had been finally understanding the abyss between the power he thought he had and the power that had just been wielded against him. There would be no debate. There would be no negotiation. There would only be capitulation. The billionaire hadn't just weathered the storm. He had become the storm. For Katherine Jenkins, the fallout was swift and absolute. Being escorted out of JFK by security was the beginning of a personal apocalypse. Her phone rang incessantly with calls from reporters. Her picture, a grainy still from the viral video, was plastered next to headlines that called her Gate Agent Karen and Airline Bigot. Her full name and even her town were circulating on social media. She was fired for cause, a legal term that vaporized her severance package and any claim to her pension benefits for gross misconduct. She tried to hire a lawyer to fight it, but no reputable firm would touch her case. She had been condemned in the court of public opinion, and the evidence was an HD video of her own malice. Within a week, she was a pariah in her own community. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid her. Friends stopped answering her calls. The life she had known, a life of quiet suburban anonymity, was over. The worst part was the dawning, sickening realization that she had done this entirely to herself. Her bitterness, her need to exert power over someone she saw as lesser, had cost her everything. 6 months later broke, and desperate, she applied for a customer service job at a bus station in Albany. The hiring manager, a kind-looking older man, glanced at her resume, then looked at her face. A flicker of recognition crossed his eyes. "Wait a minute," he said, squinting. "Aren't you—" Catherine's heart sank. She didn't even let him finish. She just stood up, gathered her things, and walked out, the ghost of Amara Washington following her. It was a life sentence of her own making. The world had a long memory for faces like hers. David Chen, her supervisor, was also fired. He lost his career not for what he did, but for what he failed to do. His story became a cautionary tale in middle management seminars about the cost of cowardly silence. He ended up selling insurance forever haunted by the moment he could have stepped in and chose not to. Meanwhile, Amara Washington landed in London. The story had preceded her. When she walked into her interview at the Devereux Design Institute, the panel of distinguished architects and designers didn't just see a promising graduate. They saw the young woman who had faced down public humiliation with breathtaking grace. They had all seen the video. "Before we discuss your portfolio, Ms. Washington," the lead interviewer said, "we'd like to say we were incredibly impressed by your composure under what must have been extraordinarily difficult circumstances." Amara simply nodded. "I believe that how we act under pressure is as much a part of our design as anything we create." She didn't just get the fellowship. They created a special expanded role for her, impressed by her maturity and vision. The public apology from Robert Stratton was broadcast live. He looked like a man at his own execution, but he delivered the lines as Andrew Thorne had written them. He apologized to Amara Washington by name. He used the words racial profiling. He announced the formation of the Amara Washington Initiative for the Arts, seeding it with $25 million. The story shifted. It was no longer just about a racist incident. It became a landmark case study in corporate accountability. Forbes and the Wall Street Journal ran extensive pieces not on the scandal, but on the Thorne mandate, a new model for activist investors using their capital to enforce social as well as fiscal responsibility. Phoenix Capital Partners, once seen as a ruthless corporate raider like Blackstone or the Carlyle Group, was suddenly lauded for its progressive vision. Andrew Thorne had turned a crisis into a masterstroke. A few months later, Amara was back in New York for the official launch of her namesake initiative. She met her uncle for dinner at a quiet, elegant restaurant in Soho. "I still don't know how to thank you, Uncle Andrew," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Andrew reached across the table and patted her hand. "Amara, you have it backwards. I didn't do this for you. I did this because of you. Your dignity in that moment was your power. You never screamed, you never cursed. You stood your ground with intelligence and grace. That's what made their actions so indefensible. All I did was hold up a mirror and make them look at what they had done." He leaned back, a rare, proud smile on his face. That woman, Catherine, thought she was punching down. She had no idea she was punching up at a queen. Amara looked out the window at the bustling New York City streets. She had walked into that airport feeling like an imposter, a girl hoping for a seat at the table. She walked out of it, a woman who had, through a trial by fire, learned that she didn't need a seat. She had the power to build a whole new table with room for everyone who, like her, had ever been told they didn't belong. Her journey was just beginning, but now she wasn't just walking toward her future. She was designing it. The story of Amara Washington and Andrew Thorne is a stark reminder that the world can pivot in a single moment. It's a story about the ugly reality of prejudice, but it's also a powerful testament to the fact that karma sometimes doesn't wait. It arrives with the full force of a corporate takeover. Catherine Jenkins learned the hard way that the person you underestimate could be the one person you can't afford to offend. But the real lesson isn't about revenge. It's about the aftermath. It's about how Amara, with her uncle's help, transformed an act of personal humiliation into a legacy of opportunity for countless others through the Amara Washington Initiative. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the hidden power dynamics all around us and the importance of standing up to injustice, please let us know in the comments below. What would you have done in Amara's situation? don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more true-life stories of drama justice and the incredible twists of fate that shape our world. Thank you for listening.